What actually happens is that you've just poured a substance that contains ethanol down your throat. It's the same substance that goes into the gasoline that fuels your car. That's what we're drinking every time we drink alcohol, because alcohol contains ethanol, which we put in gasoline. Okay. Now, I refer to alcohol as attractively packaged poison. That's what it is. It's poison in a very attractive bottle.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Reshape Your Health Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Morgan Nolte, and I'm very excited for today's episode. We're actually talking about something that may be sensitive for a lot of people and something that we've never talked about on the podcast before. And I do not want you to click out of this episode. I know that there's going to be a lot of wisdom, but you may have that internal resistance about, do I really want to hear this? Yes, you do. Your inner wisdom is telling you not to click off. So today I am interviewing James Swanwick, and he is the CEO and founder of Swanwick Sleep and Alcohol-Free Lifestyle and host of the podcast Alcohol-Free Lifestyle. He's one of the people leading the crusade to help people have a better relationship with alcohol and improving their sleep. His teachings have been featured in Forbes, Entrepreneur Magazine, and Psychology Today, and he's also a former SportsCenter anchor on ESPN, which I feel like is a great place to start. So, James, welcome to the show. Thank you for sharing your expertise and your passion. Just give us a rundown of your story and how you got to where you are today.
Sure thing. Well, I'm an Australian-American, in fact, and I was a socially acceptable drinker all through my late teens, 20s, and early 30s, in that I would drink a couple drinks a night, most nights of the week, a bit more on weekends. I was rarely getting drunk, although I did at times, but I wasn't getting arrested, or getting a DUI, or waking up in a ditch. I wasn't an alcoholic. I was just a socially acceptable, consistent drinker. But what I've realized is I got to the age of 35, I'd put on about 30 pounds that I didn't want to put on over 2 or 3 years. My sleep wasn't great. I was irritable. I was lethargic. The way I describe it, I was performing in all areas of my life at about a 6 out of 10. I was blah. That's the word I use, blah. And so I was in Austin, Texas at the annual South by Southwest Festival in 2010. I had 2 Bombay Sapphire gin and tonics at an industry party. I went back to my hotel 20 minutes north of Austin, went to sleep. And when I woke up in the morning and I looked in the mirror, I could taste the gin in my mouth and I just looked weathered. I went next door to the hotel to an IHOP, which is an international house of pancakes. And I sat there and then I thought to myself, what am I doing in an IHOP? And I thought, enough, James, just take a break from drinking alcohol, just as an experiment. See if you can just do 30 days without alcohol and just see what happens. And so I did. And in 30 days, I lost 13 pounds of body fat. I slept better. I looked better. I auditioned for and got a job as a SportsCenter anchor on ESPN, probably the most iconic sports TV news show in the world. I attracted let's just call it higher vibrational romantic interests into my life. And I started having in-depth conversations with people as opposed to trivial and surface level conversations. And so I thought, well, this is pretty good. I think I might just keep going. And then I kept going and then I kept going. And all of this feedback I got was that I was fit, healthy, stress and anxiety dropped. And so I just kept going and I haven't drunk since. It's been, 13 and a half years now. And in that time, I've, helped create an organization that now supports people having a better relationship with alcohol.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you this. First of all, thank you for sharing that story. I think it's really cool. Second of all, what does that even mean to have a better relationship with alcohol? Does that mean people have to do what you did and abstain completely? Does that mean it's just using it responsibly for their own circumstances? How do you define that?
I would invite people to stop drinking entirely. However, I've been doing this long enough to know that people most people are not going to do that. And so when I say have a better relationship with alcohol, what I really mean is reduce as much as you are able and willing. Because they did a study in 2022 that came out of the UK, and it was looking at 35,000 middle-aged and older Brits. And what they found was that even one seemingly innocent glass of alcohol per night, which is only 7 standard drinks per week, was enough to destroy gray and white matter in the brain. Now, the bumper sticker headline of that is, even innocent, seemingly innocent amounts of alcohol can cause brain degeneration. So I think people are now increasingly opening their eyes to the real consequences of even modest drinking. You do not need to be an alcoholic or need to get a DUI or need to be doing something embarrassing in the workplace from drinking too much in order for you to have alcohol be compromising your life and your lifestyle. Even innocent amounts, modest amounts of alcohol can compromise your health, your wealth, your relationships with either your husband or your wife or your children or your colleagues or your staff or your boss, and love, relationship, happiness, because any amount of alcohol increases stress and anxiety, even though most people think that drinking alcohol relieves them of stress and anxiety. So to answer your question, a better relationship with alcohol is A, being aware of the actual most recent consequences, and B, doing something intentional about that.
I have a lot of follow-up questions. I want to start with your story before we get too far removed from that. Did you have any withdrawal type symptoms or emotional symptoms, or was it difficult for you to continue after the 30 days of, a hard no on alcohol?
I felt socially awkward the first 2 weeks that I stopped drinking. In fact, I had a date. I was single at the time. I was 35. I was living in Los Angeles, California. I had a date with a woman named Andrea, and I was so self-conscious about the fact that I had invited a woman out and that I wasn't going to be drinking that I got to the bar 15 minutes early, and I made a deal with the barman. And I said to him, when I order drinks for me and my date, can you just create the illusion that you're making me a vodka soda? Like, I'll ask for a vodka soda, but just make it a soda.
Mm-hmm.
And so the barman at this bar, which was literally called Jones Bar on Santa Monica Boulevard in West Hollywood, he did this. And my date that night, Andrea, didn't realize that I was not drinking alcohol, and she had a couple of glasses of wine. But then 2 weeks later, she and I were at the Coachella Music Festival in Palm Springs outside of Los Angeles, and I was there with some of her friends, and one of her friends said, "Hey, James, I'm going to the bar. Would you like a beer?" And I said, "Oh, no, thanks. I haven't drunk alcohol in like 3 or 4 weeks." And Andrea overheard this and said, "Yes, you have. You were drinking on our first date." And I had to sheepishly admit,
Right.
in actual fact, I had misled her and that I was only drinking soda water that night. And you should have seen the look of disappointment in her eyes. Like, there was a real energetic break between us, and the relationship didn't progress past then because she felt like I had misled her, which I had. So that was a real wake-up call for me as well, which is, I was feeling awkward not drinking, and then I felt awkward withholding it from someone. And then it was an awkward situation when someone learned that I had withheld that from another person. So from that point on, I just owned it. And I just, somewhat confidently, but increasingly so over time, would just share with people, look, I'm doing a 30-day break. I'm doing a 60-day not drinking experiment. And, increasingly over time, I got more comfortable sharing that story. I didn't really have too many physical withdrawal symptoms other than some disrupted sleep in the first 7 to 10 days, which makes sense because when you start depriving your body of a toxin that it has been used to most nights of the week for many years, there's a period of adjustment. So, I was a little bit more irritable than when I was drinking, but that quickly disappeared. And after about 7 to 10 days, I started feeling terrific.
Yeah. There's a lot of things to dig into there. You said it was a toxin, and I just wanted to point that out to people. It is a toxin to your body. It's a socially accepted toxin that some of us regularly ingest. Full disclosure, I kind of told James offline, I'm more of a social drinker, maybe one standard size drink a week, if that. I always say I'd rather eat my calories. That's just kind of my approach to it. Rarely, like once every 5 years max, do I ever like quote unquote get drunk. And it is, it's so rare that it does not even worth it. So for me, I just wanted to give full disclosure to the audience. I am not completely abstinent as James is, but that's kind of where I'm at with my journey with alcohol. I wanted to talk a little bit about barriers to implementation. There's a lot of people that I know that use it as a crutch. And I wanted to circle back to that stress and anxiety conversation because we deal with so much emotional eating with our Zivli members, and that carries over to emotional drinking. And so if someone were to say, I'm going to give up alcohol for a month, I can guarantee you 2 to 3 days later, the kids are going to be crying. They're going to have a bad day at work. Something's going to go wrong, and it's going to activate them to want to drink. And so I wanted to talk about what barriers do you see when helping people at least stop it for 30 days? Like, let's just start there.
The barriers include people thinking or believing that any amount of alcohol will reduce their stress and anxiety. The opposite is true. It is true that it gives you a temporary, illusionary feeling of, let's call it, you know that sound?
I know that.
You know that sound?
Yeah.
And we also know from experience that it's temporary and it's also illusionary. What actually happens is that you've just poured a substance that contains ethanol down your throat. It's the same substance that goes into the gasoline that fuels your car. That's what we're drinking every time we drink alcohol, because alcohol contains ethanol, which we put in gasoline. Okay. Now, I refer to alcohol as attractively packaged poison. That's what it is. It's poison in a very attractive bottle. You asked what the barrier is. The barrier is cultural conditioning of looking at this very attractive bottle, digesting the ethanol and the toxins from that attractively packaged bottle, and convincing ourselves that it somehow is relieving us of stress and anxiety throughout the day. The reality is that the body now has to go to work immediately to break down the toxins that you have just digested. In fact, as it relates to sleep, you're better off drinking alcohol for breakfast anywhere close to bedtime, because at least if you're drinking alcohol for breakfast, your body now has 16 hours of going to work to break down the toxins. So when it's time to finally fall asleep, you can fall asleep naturally. But that's how long the body is going to work when you digest this ethanol and this.
Really? Will you repeat that? That's really interesting. So how long does it take to kind of clear it completely?
Well, they've done studies that show it can take up to 10 days.
Jeez.
In fact, if you were to drink a glass of wine right now, Morgan, in 5 days from now, we could take a strand of your hair. You have lovely blondie brown hair, I see there, yeah?
Yep.
We could put it under a microscope and we could tell definitively that you had a glass of alcohol within those 5 days. That's how long it stays in the system. Now, most of it, like the body doing most of the work, is about 16 hours from when you've digested it, which is why I jokingly say, let me say it again, jokingly say you're better off drinking alcohol for breakfast. This is not an invitation to pour a glass of red wine with your cornflakes and toast and bagel in the morning. But, the reality is that most people are thinking that drinking alcohol is going to help them to relax and feel sleepy and ultimately fall asleep. Now, it's true that drinking alcohol may help you to fall asleep, but the quality of your sleep is going to be severely compromised because we want your body resting during the night. We don't want your body working. It's literally like every time you drink alcohol, you may as well be just like clocking in for the night and say, right, time to go to work, body. But we don't want our body working. We want our body resting. So getting over cultural conditioning, rewiring mindset around alcohol, that's certainly the challenge that we have. And, those cultural conditioned beliefs is what we're really trying to amend here.
I think another one that comes to my mind is numbing, especially having gone, I don't even know if we're still in the COVID pandemic. I think that we are a little bit, but everyone went through that. And I know myself, there was at least one night that I can count that I turned to alcohol to numb out. And I called myself out on it. I mean, I was hanging out with my neighbor. I was hanging out with my husband. I'm like, you guys, I'm just going for it tonight. Like, Justin, you can take care of the kids. I'm going to just have, 4 of these little press drinks here and numb out. I'm guilty of that myself. But I think some people do that repeatedly to avoid addressing uncomfortable emotions within themselves. Did you have to do that? Did you have to address any uncomfortable emotions that you were maybe numbing? And maybe if it's not you, maybe you have people that you've worked with where uncomfortable emotions have arisen to the surface that they were trying to numb with alcohol.
Yes. I was relying on alcohol to relieve me of social anxiety, to fit in, to be more playful, to be more cheeky, to be the Australian living in America, living up to the stereotype, loves a couple of beers, loves a drink.
Yeah.
And so if I removed the alcohol, it was a real threat to my identity. Like, who am I without this humor around the alcohol? So yeah, there was that fear. And then in the first, month, as I described, there was then the fear that I might be ostracized from my existing social group, or that people might mistakenly believe that I was an alcoholic or I had a drinking problem. The reality was that I did have a drinking problem because it was causing problems with my sleep and my productivity and my clarity and my joy. People mistakenly believe that you have to be arrested or get a DUI or make an absolute ass of yourself in order for you to have a drinking problem. No, I had a drinking problem, and that I was living at a 6 out of 10 when I'm capable of a 9.
That's brilliant. I mean, it's just redefining what a drinking problem is. Like, that's very practical. And I think that that's very easy for people to understand. Well, do I have a drinking problem? Is drinking affecting the quality of my life? Pretty simple, So I think those were a couple of the barriers. I think another barrier, this is maybe a little bit more rare, but people concerned about eating, they think, okay, well, I'm going to have a glass of wine because it's less calories than the 3 cookies that I really want. So from a weight loss standpoint, they might think that they're doing themselves good from a caloric standpoint by having 100 calories of wine versus like 200 calories of cookies. So they're replacing it. So what do you say about that?
Well, a glass of Pinot Grigio has the same amount of calories as 2 donuts.
Huh.
So if you want to go to Dunkin' Donuts or Krispy Kreme donuts, and you're someone who's trying to lose unwanted body fat, every time you have a glass of wine, Pinot Grigio, close to that, just imagine eating the same amount of calories as a Krispy Kreme donut.
I'm going to I want to Google that. I don't even know how many that is, but that's really interesting. And Pinot Grigio is actually one of my preferred wines now that you say that. Mm-hmm. I always say, like, from a barbecue sauce, if you really calculate how much sugar is in your barbecue sauce and then you pretend like you're pouring sugar on top of your chicken or on top of your meat, I think those visual images are really helpful. So instead of, drinking that glass of wine, you're eating a donut, having that mentality around it.
Yeah. The other thing is, when you digest alcohol, the body turns it into sugar.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you made a reference before, which I thought was brilliant, which is you'd much prefer to eat your calories than drink them. When you're drinking beer, wine, liquor, anything, your body's going to turn that into sugar. which prevents you from losing unwanted body fat. The other thing it does is it gives you food cravings.
Yes.
And you start to crave carbohydrates. So let me give you an example. You're out to dinner in a restaurant with your husband or your wife or your friends or whoever you're out with. And when you sit down before you've had your first drink, you say to yourself, I'm going to eat super clean. I'm just going to have 1, maybe 2 glasses of wine. Definitely not going to have the dessert, and call it a night. And that'll be a good night. But we all know what tends to happen, don't we?
Yep.
We order the meal, we have the wine or 2 or the couple of drinks, and then the waiter or the waitress, who I refer to as the smiling assassin, because they're always smiling as they offer you their attractively packaged poison or their sugary treats, they'll come around and say, oh, can I get you some dessert now? Now, a couple of reasons why your willpower just has dropped dramatically at that point. First of all, you've got a couple of drinks in you. Inhibition goes by the wayside.
Goes down.
Right?
Yep.
Yeah. Plus, your body has now turned those 2 drinks into sugar, and now it's craving more of it. You ever like opened up a bag of sweets and you eat them, and the more you eat, the more you have to eat, right? Mm-hmm. The scientists have created it this way, so we like crave more of these foods. It's the same thing with alcohol. And so now we're craving carbohydrates. So when someone comes in, and sugar, I should say, so when a smiling assassin comes in and says, oh, would you like some dessert? You are primed and ready to go. You are absolute yes. Mm-hmm. And you're like, it's okay. It's Friday. Whatever. It's Saturday night. And then you start telling yourself these stories like life is supposed to be lived and life is to be enjoyed, as if eating a sugary treat, and even the word treat, like, it's a treat. Right. See how the cultural conditioning, again, it's treat. It's like, it's a treat. It's something to reward ourselves with, even though this is just straight damn sugar, which is going to go straight to the hips or the shoulders
or the liver.
The liver, of course. And then, we go home, we go to sleep, and we wake up in the morning with regret. And we can, taste the sugar, we can taste the wine, we can taste the meal. And we've probably, put in us about at least 1,000 more calories than we intended when we sat down to place our initial order.
Yeah. It's so crazy how it really does change one's inhibitions. Like, we had a double date recently with some friends, and we went golfing, and we went out to Spezia. Have you been to Spezia in Omaha when you were here it's great. No. It's a really good restaurant. And just like you said, I went in, I'm going to have a super healthy dinner. I'm not going to eat any of the bread, definitely not going to get dessert. And what happened was I had a glass of wine, maybe 2, but I think I usually just do 1. And I had a roll, which is that's not like me. I teach a low insulin lifestyle. And then it was a later dinner. And my favorite place in Omaha that you have to go to if you would like something that's sugary, which you probably don't, is Coneflower Creamery, which is in the Blackstone district. The best ice cream in the world. So if I'm going to have sugar, that's what I want to have. They closed at 10, and I was devastated. I'm like, no, we're going to have to go home. I was so sad that I didn't have my sugar. And it's like, man, that's not me, and my friend had she got some ice cream. So I had a couple bites of hers, but at the restaurant. But that is just such a classic example. I am so disciplined. I really do walk the talk. But alcohol, I definitely know if I'm going to choose to drink it, I also have to choose to deal with the more intense sweet cravings, period. Carb cravings, sugar, you name it, they're going to be there. And so I think that that's an excellent point from a weight loss standpoint. It's like, okay, well, you can have 100 calories of wine or 200 calories of wine. That's going to make you want more sugar. So that's a really good point. Also, just, how is it metabolized? I think it's important to recognize this ethanol is not metabolized like your pasta, like your steak. So can you kind of speak to that and how it acts as a toxic substance and harms our liver for people that don't know?
Well, look, when you're drinking that alcohol, the body starts to go in order of what it's going to break down first, right? So if you had just had, let's say, chicken and vegetables. The body would break down the chicken, it would break down the vegetables, done, right? So it's going to work a couple of times. It's going to break down one of the food groups first, and it's going to break down the other one. If you then drink alcohol, what's the body going to do? It's going to go to the toxins first. So it's going to start to break down the alcohol. But then while it's focusing on trying to break down the toxins from the alcohol, what's happening to the chicken and the vegetables? It's just being stored as unwanted fat, right? So, there's a lot of nutritional science around food pairing and as it relates to good digestion. For example, they say you probably shouldn't eat a meat and rice and potato and vegetables because the body will take 4 times as long to digest those foods as if you just paired meat with vegetables or meat and potatoes or chicken and potatoes, for example. Same concept works with alcohol. When you drink alcohol, the body and the liver will go to work to break down that alcohol first and then move on to the other foods. And so you're lengthening the duration of time that your body has to work, which makes us tired and lethargic and foggy and irritable. And you're storing body fat that you ordinarily wouldn't have. The other thing it's important to note, alcohol has been linked to high blood pressure, heart disease, stroke, liver disease. You mentioned this before, digestive problems. Okay, it's been linked to cancer of the breast, mouth, throat, esophagus, voice box, liver, colon, and rectum. It weakens the immune system, increasing the chances of getting sick. It has been linked to learning and memory problems, including dementia and poor educational performance. Now, again, you might be listening to me now, Mr. or Mrs. Listener, and going, this doesn't relate to me. I only have 1 or 2 drinks a night or a few drinks on the weekend. I'm okay. Well, I draw your attention to that 2022 study of 35,000 Brits, middle-aged or older. 7 standard drinks a week. 7 per week is enough to cause brain degeneration. So just add up, how many drinks are you actually drinking? And if it's at least 7, then you are now susceptible to all of those health issues that I just listed. I'm just going to see if I can show you one really fascinating diagram, Morgan, and maybe your listeners won't be able to see it, but I'll try my best to describe it. We had a client of ours. We have a 90-day stop drinking process and program, which is called Project 90 over at my organization, Alcohol Free Lifestyle. And here it is. We had a gentleman. This gentleman was actually in Australia. Most of our clients are in the US, but we have a handful of Australians and Brits. And I'm going to show you a graph here. This is his resting heart rate when he started with us, and then you'll see where it was when it finished. And Morgan, I'll let you describe what you're seeing if you like, but here it is.
Oh my gosh, super high. So it's a little bit blurry because we're on Zoom and we have our blurry filters, but it's super high, kind of like up and down, up and down, up and down, and then it just tanks. Like it's down.
So that's the resting heart rate of one of our members. So joined us on day 1, resting heart rate was way up, boom, 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 because we hypothesize because of the drinking. Yeah. Then, as this gentleman went through this 90-day process, everything started to calm down. It started to go from boom, 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 boom to boom, 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 and then boom, boom, boom. Same thing we see with blood pressure. People get blood pressure readings. On day 1, they start with us in our 90-day stop drinking process. Blood pressure elevated. Doctors concerned. Triglycerides through the roof. Day 90, not only have most of them lost at least 20 pounds, those who, had 20 pounds to lose, of course, resting heart rate plummets, blood pressure plummets, feelings of joy, peace, calm, boost, go to the moon, increase. It is remarkable the transformation that can be generated in human beings simply by removing the attractively packaged poison from our life.
Yeah, I think that's really cool. And for people that don't know, the heart rate is part of the blood pressure equation. So when your heart rate goes down, your blood pressure is naturally going to go down too. But I'm guessing there's other physiological things going on that also contribute to a lowered blood pressure. I wanted to ask a question early on that I forgot, which is how the heck did you make such a transfer, like a pivot in your career from, SportsCenter to how did you become so passionate about this to like start at least one business around it? Because I feel like you definitely found your why, you found your calling. But I forgot to ask that earlier on because it takes guts and it takes a lot of courage and it takes someone a little bit crazy to start their own business. It takes one to know one. So what was that like for you?
Thank you, Morgan. Well, I stopped drinking in 2010. I got the SportsCenter ESPN job about 4 or 5 weeks afterwards, right? So almost instantaneously, I had clarity and focus and energy, and that really did contribute to me getting the job. If I was still drinking, I'm convinced I would not have got that job. And then when I got the job, and I just enjoyed the benefits of being alcohol-free so much, that including clarity, focus, and energy, joy, higher caliber relationships, more presence. I just decided I was going to keep on going. And then I got to year 2 in that job at ESPN. And, look, I absolutely loved that job because I got to talk about sport. I was on TV. I had a Z level of fame amongst mostly male sports fans. I got paid handsomely to watch and talk about sport all day. However, I still recognized that I was working for corporate America. I was still kind of stuck in corporate America in the sense that ESPN is owned by Disney. You still got to clock in at a certain time and clock off at a certain time. There are still rules and regulations. You still only get a set amount of vacation per year. And I really wanted to live location independently. I wanted to travel the world, generate income for myself from a business. So towards the end of my ESPN career, I started to learn about online businesses and online marketing. I finally, after 2 years, resigned from ESPN and said goodbye intentionally to a handsomely paid job with good benefits to go and venture into the entrepreneurial world. And candidly, I struggled for 18 months, 2 years. In fact, I can tell you, I generated only about $30,000 in personal income in the 2 years after I left ESPN. I questioned whether I'd made the right decision or not. However, in early 2015, I suddenly had the idea and I thought, so many people are asking me about me not drinking because at that stage it had been 4 and a bit years since I'd stopped. Maybe there's a business here where I can share my journey with people and encourage and inspire them to take a 30-day break from alcohol. And so in January 2015, I created a little online program called the 30-Day No Alcohol Challenge. You can still see it today. It's at 30daynoalcoholchallenge.com. And I charged $67 for it at the time. And on Super Bowl Sunday, 2015, I made my first enrollment. Someone bought it and signed up to it. And that grew into almost 20,000 people. That's a football stadium of its own, going through that program to stop drinking for 30 days. And then from there, I started a sleep company called Swanwick Sleep. My last name is Swanwick, and we produce these blue light blocking glasses, which again, the listener probably can't see us right now, but I'm wearing a pair of orange lens blue blockers from my sleep company, Swanwick. And I created that business because I really wanted to help people sleep better, and I learned how to sleep better. And so just to go back to your initial question, what I really discovered in hindsight is that by stopping drinking, it opened up a cascade of other healthy modalities to me that I became aware of. And then I just started creating businesses that were an extension of my lifestyle, that were a reflection of my healthy habits. And so, my 90 days stop drinking process today is a combination of sleep techniques, mindset techniques, meditation, habits. One of our guest speakers is an author of the New York Times bestselling book, Atomic Habits. His name is James Clear. It sold about 15 million copies.
Read that one. I talk about James a lot. Actually, I was going to bring him up in the moment of decision.
Yes.
Or like when you want to have it, that's just something. Okay. We'll have to talk about him later. Okay.
And my entrepreneurial journey was off and running. And look, it's not very classy to talk about money and revenue, but just to give you an idea of the impact that we've been able to create in the world in terms of helping people stop drinking and also to sleep better. Since I started those businesses, we've done well over $20 million in sales just from those two businesses alone. Now, I'm not suggesting that I've got $20 million in my bank account. Obviously,
anyone who knows that, yeah.
Yeah, that's revenue, not income, but that's a lot. It's not just a lot of money, it's a lot of impact that's been able to have been created in the world. And I can trace it all the way back to that IHOP in Austin, Texas, where I just made a choice. And the choice was stop drinking. And at the time, I thought it was going to be 30 days. And then now it's been 13 years and still going. And, we've helped tens of thousands of people to have a better relationship with alcohol. We've helped tens of thousands of people. We've actually helped 180,000 people now to wear a pair of blue light blocking glasses before they go to sleep each night.
Yeah.
And so that's how I went from, SportsCenter anchor in a corporate America job to building businesses that are just an extension of my lifestyle.
Yeah, really tapping into the last 30 to 40% of yourself, it sounds like, that the alcohol was masking. So
yes,
that's really cool.
Yeah.
Okay, we have some sleep tips. I have a couple other questions that I've written down here. I think, with the 90-day program, we'll link up some of those resources in the show notes. If you had to give people, some simple, practical pieces of advice to stop drinking for 30 days, what would you tell them?
When you begin the 30 days, do not begin with the intention of celebrating on day 30 or 31 with a drink. Because what you will do is that you will go through those 30 days feeling like you're depriving yourself of something. You'll likely politely decline social invitations where there are alcohol. You'll think mistakenly, that you need to retreat from society, lock yourself at home, drink some chai tea and watch Netflix because, heaven forbid you'd go out where there's alcohol. Maybe you'd be tempted. Do not do that. Instead, my invitation is run towards social situations where there are alcohol. Practice being alcohol-free. Commit having the most fun out of anyone at that social engagement while being alcohol-free. Practice confidently sharing with people why you are alcohol-free and the benefits that you are generating because of that. They've done numerous studies now that show that persuasion and influence comes down to only 7% what you say and 93% how you say it. So if someone starts asking you, why aren't you drinking? Instead of the 93% of your body language being, gee, I'm a bit awkward, or I drank too much. I could drink, but I'm taking a break. Rather than putting out the energy that you're depriving yourself of something fun and that stopping drinking is hard, why not put out the 93% body language and tonality of being, yeah, you know what? I'm actually enjoying this. I'm doing this experiment at the moment. It feels pretty good. I've noticed I'm sleeping better. I've lost a little bit of weight. I'm not sure how long I'm going to go, but I think I'm going to go past the 30 days. Yeah. And look out. I'll tell you what, we'll go shot for shot tonight. You drink your vodka and I'll drink my soda water and we'll go shot for shot. See who's still standing, shall we? Ha, 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 ha. make a little joke, be lighthearted about it. Now, when you do that, when you're lighthearted and you're fun and you confidently share about you not drinking, it's very challenging for anyone to persuade you to drink. In fact, people won't even often try to persuade you to drink anyway when they experience you being so comfortable with not drinking. It's only when you're sitting in the corner being a killjoy and feeling miserable for yourself, and you got the resting bitch face or the resting whatever face, and you're not having a fun time, that people get annoyed. Because people want you to have a good time, want you to be enjoyable to be around. That's when they start coming with the alcohol and saying things like, go on, just have one. But it's my birthday, but it's the Super Bowl, but it's a special occasion, blah, 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 blah. And now the cultural conditioning kicks in. But if you can just confidently enjoy yourself and stop bowing down at the altar of attractively packaged poison, you will be shocked at how much better life can feel.
Mm-hmm. So number one, go into it with good vibes. Do not avoid social situations. Be confident in your own choice, and people will be confident in your choice too.
And whenever you walk into any bar or restaurant, the first thing you should do is just walk confidently up to the barman or the barwoman. And when they say to you, what can I get you? You just smile and you say, oh, I'd love a soda, water, ice, and a piece of lime, please.
Yep.
That's it. You don't have to think about it. You don't have to debate as you're walking up there. The question doesn't need to be, am I going to drink? Am I not going to drink? Just have it in your mind. I'm just going to walk straight up. Let me have a soda, water, ice, and a piece of lime. Or you can add cranberry or pineapple, whatever you want to have in it. I would avoid Diet Cokes and sodas and all that kind of stuff, because then you're just replacing one, sugary substance for another. Instead, like soda water is great, Pellegrino, Perrier, and then just put any kind of little flavor in there if you like. Not too much, because cranberry juice and pineapple juice also has a lot of sugar, but you can just put a little splash in. I like lime, just squeeze the lime in, gives it a nice citrus flavor. And whenever a smiling assassin offers you a drink, just smile back and say, oh, no, thank you. May I have a soda, water, ice, and a piece of lime? Thank you so much. The end. It's so much easier than we suspect.
Yeah. No, there's so much here that really resonates with the book Atomic Habits that you brought up earlier, like mastering the moment of decision. I'm thinking of, I don't know if I'll be able to name them off the top of my head. Make it easy, make it attractive, make it obvious. And then there's one more. Do you remember the other one?
Are you talking about James Clear? List them again for me so I can.
Easy. Make any habit that you want to do, make it easy.
Yeah.
Make it obvious. Mm-hmm. Oh, I think I know it. Make it attractive and make it rewarding.
Yeah, I'm going to Google it right now. I want to make sure I get the right 4. Here we go. He's got the 4 habits are, what did you say?
Easy, obvious, attractive, and rewarding, maybe?
Yes. Easy, correct? Obvious, attractive, and satisfying.
Satisfying. Okay. Yep.
Yeah.
And so one of the ways to make it easy is to give yourself one decision and give it to yourself ahead of time so that when you get to the bar, you know exactly what you're going to do. Practice those responses to people ahead of time. What are some, like if someone is trying to give up alcohol and let's say their partner is not on board and their partner wants alcohol in the house still, do you suggest that they get it out of the house? Do you suggest that they move it to a different shelf so that it's, the reverse is true. If you want to break a bad habit, you make it hard, not easy. So if the alcohol is in the pantry, maybe you move it downstairs, out of sight, out of mind. You make it unsatisfying, and then whatever the opposite are of the other ones. So what is your advice there on some practical things after the first 2 steps that you gave?
Well, I'll give you the actual advice that James Clear from Atomic Habits gave me when I interviewed him for our Project 90 process. I was actually interviewing him over a Zoom call, and I picked up my desktop my desktop computer, and he said, go over to your fridge. And so we went over to the fridge. I was kind of awkwardly showing him the camera, on my computer. And I actually had alcohol in the fridge. It wasn't my alcohol. It was alcohol that was there from a poker evening that I had with some friends a week earlier. And he said, well, here's what you'd do if you weren't willing to get the alcohol out of your house. See that wine bottle there you've got on the side of the fridge? Put it on the top shelf at the back. I went, okay, and I put it on the top shelf at the back. And then as I stood there and even crouched down a little bit to look inside the fridge, I could barely, if at all, see that wine. It was out of sight. And then he said, see those remaining beers you got there? Put them on the bottom shelf at the back and then move those vegetables and that water bottle in front of it. Place it there. I did that. And then again, he said, there you go. It's now out of sight. So if it's out of sight, it's out of mind. And I went, oh, okay, that's very interesting. The other thing he suggested, besides just, pouring the alcohol out and throwing it out, obviously, is taking, wine from your cellar or your wine rack out into the garage and getting up on a ladder and sticking it on a shelf in the garage and leaving it there, so that every time you thought about having a drink, you would literally have to get up, go outside, go into the garage, pull out the ladder, go up, retrieve it. And so the idea is that, by putting those obstacles between you and the alcohol, the hope then is that you talk yourself out of that. Because you got to do so many things to get to the alcohol. The simplest thing is just don't bring it into your home at all. Just remove it entirely. And that's the same concept works for sugary foods. I mean, I don't have any packaged carbohydrates or biscuits or cereals or bread or anything in my home. Like the only thing that gets into the fridge or the pantry of my home was either once alive and is now dead, or was plucked from the ground or fell off a tree. That's it. There's no pre-packaged nonsense. And so it's very easy when you got a craving for food and you go to the cupboard or the fridge, when the only options are healthy options, guess what? You end up being increasingly healthy. Yep.
And I want to plug that book again. I think it's obviously made a big impact for both of us in our coaching. But if you've never read Atomic Habits by James Clear and you're really struggling with a certain habit, that's a really lovely book to read to support you, whether you want to drink less, eat less sugar, exercise more, improve your sleep habits, which I want to get into next. Really just highly suggest that book. So let's talk about sleep. We talked about blue light blockers, which I've talked about several times on the show. They're one of my number one recommendations to sleep better is amber colored blue light blockers. My recommendation that I use, I'm curious to see what you say, is about 2 hours before you want to be asleep. What is your recommendation about that?
Well, look, there's a better way of ensuring you get a better night's sleep that doesn't even involve blue blockers. And that involves sitting in the dark and living your life by candlelight. Right? But no one's going to do that. No. No one's going to do that. But literally, that is the best way, because you think about it, when we were cavemen and cave women, we didn't have electronic light. We just had fire and flame. And when you stare into a fire or a flame, it does not disrupt your melatonin release. Yet, artificial light at night, light bulbs, TV screens, computer screen, refrigerator light, microwave light, bathroom light, reading light, all of that light emits an artificial blue light, which triggers your pituitary and pineal gland, which suppresses melatonin release. So what is the next best thing besides sitting in the dark and living your life by candlelight? It is to wear a pair of quality, scientifically proven, orange-lensed blue light blocking glasses. Now, you mentioned the word amber there. And now, without knowing which glasses you're wearing, let me just see if I can.
They look like yours.
Okay, good.
Yep, they're orange. I don't know why I say amber. Yep.
So our glasses, these are from Swanwick Sleep. They're affectionately known as Swannies. My last name is Swanwick, so the nickname of these glasses from 180,000 customers at least are Swannies. And these are scientifically proven to help people sleep and perform better by the University of Washington. In 2019, the University of Washington did a controlled study on these glasses, To my knowledge, they're still the only pair of blue blockers on the market that have been scientifically tested. I know there have been many glasses that have been put through spectrometers and things like that, but in terms of having an independent university formal study done, to my knowledge, these are the only ones so far. What they found is that people who wore these glasses at just an hour before they wanted to sleep reported sleeping 11% better. And then the following day, they reported up to 13% more productivity and clarity and focus because they were well rested. So you said, is 2 hours the right amount of time? Is it 1 hour, 3 hours? The answer is really any time after the sun goes down, putting the glasses on is going to be beneficial. I'll tell you what I do. I put mine on 45 minutes or so before I know I wish to sleep. Now, to be clear, you do not fall asleep with these glasses on, right?
Correct.
You do remove them. But what people mistakenly do is they wear the glasses for an hour or two, then they take them off and they go and brush their teeth in the bathroom light, and they're just triggering that pituitary nail gland again. So what I do is once I put the glasses on 45 minutes, an hour before sleep, I keep them on until I get into bed, switch off the final light, and then I remove the glasses and I roll over and I go to sleep. And what I found anecdotally is that my sleep is just, transformed over the years.
Yes. And I completely agree. I don't know. I think that there was a cardiologist, maybe Dr. Michael Twyman, and I interviewed him quite a while ago on heart attack prevention. And he's very big on light and, light therapy and circadian timing, all this stuff. And so I got him after he suggested them, and I love them. Like I get so much better sleep. I fall asleep faster. I stay asleep better. I don't have any tech to measure my sleep quality, but I know how I feel, and I just love them. So anyone who doesn't have them, we're going to put a link to your Swannies in the show notes. I wanted to ask you too. So right now in Nebraska, it doesn't get dark until probably 9. And I really try to be asleep. But really, it probably doesn't get dark till 9:15. So for me, it's my bedtime's 9:30, 9:45. And that's why I do it a little bit earlier, is because I feel like in the winter, that's fine. It gets dark at 5 or 6. But in the summer, because of daylight savings time, it's just a little bit wonky. And I like to keep my sleep a little tighter. So I usually use my blue light blockers to kind of keep that same physiological darkness, so my sleep schedule doesn't get all messed up. Is that kind of
yeah, that works. Yeah, I mean, I think if wearing your glasses 2 hours before bedtime has been working for you and been effective, irrespective of whether it's light outside or not, keep doing that.
Yeah.
What we want is for the body to start preparing for sleep, as soon as possible. But again, circling back to the first part of our conversation around alcohol, when you drink alcohol, the body isn't really preparing for sleep. Now, it's like I said before, it's true that you might fall asleep quicker. What's more accurate is that you're probably passing out as opposed to falling asleep. But the quality of your sleep will be compromised. You may have noticed I'm wearing an Aura ring.
Yeah, I saw that.
And a lot of my clients who do our 90-day stop drinking process, and clients who become Swannies customers with the blocking glasses, they will track their sleep before they begin our program or before they start wearing our Swannies blue blockers. And then they will track their sleep once they stop drinking alcohol, or in the case of the Swanwick Sleep Company, when they start wearing the blue blockers. And almost every time they notice a very significant, noteworthy improvement in their sleep, both in duration and the quality. So this is not just some woo-woo stuff with anecdotal.
No, it's not. And people think that because they look really weird. They're not sexy. They are really ugly. The glasses, but they work. And it's okay, it's not sexy when you wear them, but good energy the next day is. So just do it. Just do it. I have a question for you. I don't know if you know the answer. Oura Ring versus Fitbit or Apple for sleep monitoring. Do you have any thoughts on the similarities or differences or recommendations?
I don't, other than I had Dr. Michael Bruce, who's renowned as one of the world's top sleep doctors, come on as a guest speaker for my Project 90 Stop Drinking clients recently. And one of our clients asked him a very similar question, and he just said definitively Aura. He just said Aura Ring is the best one. I don't know why, but I'll just borrow what he said. I've only ever tried Aura. I haven't tried the other one, so I can't speak to that. But I'll take the best advice of Dr. Michael Bruce any day.
Yeah, I'm looking into heart rate monitors right now, and I'm like, oh, it'd be nice if there was kind of an all-in-one device that could track sleep and heart rate monitor and all that stuff. So anyways, I wanted to pick your brain on that. We have just a little bit of time left, and I wanted to maybe dive into a few more sleep tips. So aside from blocking blue light until it's dark, that's such an excellent tip that I get on my husband for, because he'll turn like the light on when we go to bed. And I'm like, turn that off. And I have as minimal light as possible to take my contacts out and all that stuff. Any other tips besides really modifying that light environment and not drinking?
Expose yourself to as much natural sunlight first thing in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
Our skin has receptors on it. And when the sunlight hits the skin, it tells our internal body clock, known as our circadian rhythm, that it's wake up time. Our body starts to flood with cortisol and other daytime hormones, and then a timer is set so that 16 hours later, the body naturally then wants to start preparing for sleep and releasing the melatonin. But if you stay indoors, 2-3 hours after you wake up, you're not giving your body ample time or opportunity to get exposed to that natural sunlight and get that body clock and circadian rhythm really set in motion. So the bumper sticker is expose yourself to as much natural sunlight as early as possible in the morning and block as much artificial light at night. Second thing is caffeine. You want to be avoiding caffeine within 10 hours of sleep. So if you go to sleep at 10 o'clock nightly, then you want to make sure that your last coffee is before noon or by noon. People will swear, they'll say, oh, but I have a cappuccino for dessert at the end of the night and I sleep just fine. Well, again, it might be true that you fall asleep just fine, but there is no universe that we currently occupy that will have your sleep be not compromised by having a stimulant like caffeine anywhere close to bedtime. So again, I don't care if you tell me that for 20, 30 years, you've been drinking coffee for dessert or for dinner and you fall asleep just fine. Track it with a device like an Oura Ring. Your sleep quality will be compromised if you do that. They've also done studies that show that people who exercise in the morning tend to sleep a little better than those who exercise in the evening. I think it's because of two main reasons. One of those two rather being people who exercise in the morning tend to do it more regularly because life doesn't get in the way and there's more excuses in the afternoon to skip it. And so people who exercise more regularly tend to be healthier overall, which lends itself to good night's sleep. And then secondly, we want a cool body temperature when we sleep. And if you are exercising too close to bedtime, your body temperature will be high, which is not conducive to a good night's sleep. The other thing I would say is, a lot of people get up in the night to use the bathroom because they're drinking probably too much liquid close to bedtime. Try to get most of your water consumption done earlier in the day, or at least as early as possible. And then really try to avoid drinking any liquids a couple of hours before bedtime, at least. And just to repeat again, almost ad nauseum, just don't drink alcohol, because any amount of attractively packaged poison in the last 2 or 3 hours before sleep is going to severely compromise the quality of your sleep.
Mm-hmm. I think all that's excellent. I feel like this has been a really well-rounded conversation on alcohol and sleep. Were there any other points that you really wanted to share today?
I've had a life with alcohol and a life without, and without is way better. Again, I want to repeat what I said earlier, which is you don't need to be waking up in a ditch, getting arrested, or be an alcoholic for any amount of alcohol to be compromising your life. And I would just ask the listener just to be honest with yourself and just say to yourself or ask yourself, how are my drinking habits possibly affecting me? And it might just be 10 extra pounds, or it might just be a little less presence with your son or your daughter or your children, or it might just be a little bit of additional strain in your romantic relationship, or it might just be 5 minutes late for work each day, which is showing up in you getting only a 7 out of 10 rating when you could have got a 9. And maybe that means you don't get that $10,000 or $20,000 a year promotion, or maybe you run a business and you don't do an additional deal or an additional sales call or create an additional revenue stream, or you don't hire the right person, or you don't fire the right person because you're drinking and you're irritable and you're stressed and you're lethargic. That can equate to hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not millions of dollars. So my invitation would be, try to get as honest with yourself as possible. If you want to do a scorecard and figure out how much your drinking may be costing you, at least financially, then you can always go to alcoholfreelifestyle.com/scorecard. You can enter your details there. I'll ask you a series of questions. And often people tell us it's frightening what the calculator spits out. It will tell you pretty definitively down to the dollar how much your drinking is actually costing you. So, yeah.
I was thinking about that too, just how much money you've saved over the years, because when my husband and I when we want to tighten up our budget, that's kind of the first thing that we go to is not only the alcohol drinks, but the sparkling waters that I like to drink. They're not exactly cheap. And if we just stop buying those, that's an easy $20 a month minimum, probably. So have you ever done the calculation? Like if someone's having one drink a night and they stop drinking for a year, or do you have any like numbers off the top of your head like that?
Yes.
How much do they save?
I'm not interested in how much you save, quite
I know.
frankly.
That's just a different angle to the conversation. Yeah.
Yeah. Because most people think, oh, I don't spend that much on alcohol. It might only be like $100 a week or $80 a week, which is only $400 a month, which is only $5,000 a year. That's not too bad. I don't care. What I'm more interested in is how much revenue or income you don't generate because you're drinking that attractively packaged poison. Because if you're operating at a 6 out of 10 or even a 7 out of 10, and you have a business and that business is doing, let's just use a hypothetical, $200,000 a year. If you stop drinking and now you had more clarity and focus and energy, and you went from a 6 out of 10 to an 8 out of 10 or a 9 out of 10 in clarity, focus, energy, strategy, drive, that could turn your business from a $200,000 a year revenue business to a $300,000 a year business. That's $100,000. So who cares that you spend $5,000 on alcohol? It's the $100,000 that you don't generate because you're only spending your $5,000. So again, this is like, should be a wake-up call to most people. Stop tricking yourself. Stop convincing yourself that this is an innocent activity. If you value health, wealth, love, and happiness.
Yeah. And I think this has been really motivational for me. We talked offline. I said, okay, I've almost had a drink, several nights. And I said, I'm not, because I'm going to be interviewing James soon. And so anyways, I thought that was really interesting. And the last thing is, this is something that I want to get better at for sure. But it's interesting. The one memory that I have during COVID of over drinking was because I wasn't being present with my kids. So we can talk about revenue, we can talk about money, but I think it comes down to relationships. And are you numbing out? Are you not being present to your kids? How does that affect your kids? How does that affect your marriage? And so, man, to me, that's worth way more than an extra $100,000 is some extra memories with my kids, extra time, to be present with them. So thank you so much, James. I really appreciate your time. We will be sure to link up all of those resources, and I wish you the very best.
Thank you so much for having me, Morgan.
Yeah. Bye.